Have you ever heard of a bodybuilder who managed to outshine Ronnie Coleman in his prime? That's right. There's an athlete who, during one of the most competitive times in the history of this sport, beat Ronnie on stage. Hello, this is a new video from Bodybuilding World, and this is the story of Gunter Schlierkamp, the bodybuilder who was politically lost the possibility of beating Ronnie Coleman. Gunter Schlierkamp, a German giant who is still considered by many fans to be the true champion of Mr. Olympia 2002. The result of that competition that we will talk about today caused controversy among the public, who could not accept the final verdict. For many, it was an unfair decision. Despite this setback, Gunter has always been admired for his incredible charisma and an impressive physiognomy that overshadowed even the biggest names in bodybuilding. Gunter Schlierkamp was born on February 2, 1970, in the city of Aachen, Germany. From the age of 16, he already showed a great passion for bodybuilding, inspired by legends such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, and especially after watching iconic films such as Conan the Barbarian and the documentary Pumping Iron. Believe it or not, Gunter won only one professional title throughout his career, but that one win was against none other than Ronnie Coleman, at a time when everyone thought Ronnie was simply unbeatable. Despite this incredible feat, Gunter never received the visibility he truly deserved, being constantly underestimated by the media and the bodybuilding community. It was in 1986 that the German took his first serious steps in the gym, beginning his path towards the physical transformation that would put him on the global bodybuilding map. Gunter was fortunate to begin his career at a time when the sport was growing exponentially and there was an increasing demand for bigger, more impressive athletes. What set him apart, aside from his dedication, was his height and muscular size. While many bodybuilders of the era stood no taller than 6 feet, Gunter, at 6'1", stood out for bringing a massive, shapely, muscular aesthetic. He and fellow countryman Markus Rühl were part of this new generation of giant bodybuilders. His first significant appearance on the competitive scene came when he defeated the renowned Milos Sarsov, one of the biggest names of the era. However, after this victory, Gunter faced challenges in subsequent competitions, often finishing far from the top spots. The reason? He was competing during one of the most competitive eras in bodybuilding history, alongside legends such as Kevin Leverone, Ronnie Coleman, Dexter Jackson, Chris Cormier, and Markus Rühl. Every competition was a true battle of giants, and despite Gunter's incredible physique, he had a hard time winning titles. At the Mr. Olympia contest he entered, his performance was not the best either. But from 2002 onwards, something changed. His physique began to evolve dramatically year after year, and by 2002, he was at his best. The iconic photos from his training sessions with the legendary Charles Glass at the Gold's Gym in Los Angeles show an imposing and terrifying Gunter, not only because of his size, but also because of the quality of his musculature. He was, without a doubt, a monster on the rise. In the days leading up to the 2002 Mr. Olympia, Gunter's physique was absolutely impeccable. That edition was one of the most anticipated in history, with true bodybuilding legends. Names like Ronnie Coleman, Kevin Leverone, Lee Priest, and of course Gunter himself, made up a lineup that promised fierce competition. The German was in the best shape of his life, displaying massive biceps, voluminous pectorals, and perfectly developed shoulders. Every muscle in his body was sculpted and proportioned, demonstrating a balance between size and definition that many thought was unattainable. Meanwhile, Ronnie Coleman, who had dominated the scene for years, didn't look like he was at his best. Something was different that day. He had received criticism for not being able to keep his abs as defined as in previous competitions, and rumors suggested that he had tried to change his preparation strategy to arrive more conditioned. Compared to the Ronnie of 2001, something was missing. The visual impact he had always offered was not there. Many believed that this would be the weakest year of his Mr. Olympia career. Gunter, on the other hand, was surprisingly at his best. His physique seemed to be on another level, not only in terms of size, but also definition. He took the stage with a confidence he had never shown before, radiating charisma with his famous smile. Every pose he made drew applause from the audience, and his presence stood out among the biggest names in the sport. It was clear that he was there to make history. What made that competition even more memorable was the perception that Gunter could actually beat Ronnie Coleman. To many pundits and fans in attendance, it was apparent that the German was in better physical condition than Ronnie that day. The balance between muscle mass and definition was impressive, and his performance on stage left everyone in awe. However, what happened next shocked everyone. When the final result was announced and Ronnie Coleman was crowned champion, the crowd reaction was immediate and explosive. Boos echoed throughout the venue, creating one of the biggest controversies ever seen in Mr. Olympia history. The crowd, who believed Gunter deserved the win, couldn't believe it. It was a defining moment, not just because of the controversy, but also because of how Gunter had earned the respect and admiration of everyone. Even without the title, he walked away as a true champion in the eyes of the fans. That day, Gunter proved that he could not only compete with the best, but that he also deserved a place among the legends of the sport. As always, with his trademark smile, Gunter Schlierkamp walked onto the stage and accepted the result of the 2002 Mr. Olympia with grace, even in the face of a controversial outcome. He accepted the award calmly, and in a humble statement, he said that just from the thunderous applause and affection of the audience that night, he already felt like the true champion. Ronnie Coleman, on the other hand, took the title that night, but decided to compete in another event soon after, the Strength Show that same year. This show brought together again some of the biggest names in bodybuilding, such as Gunter, Dexter Jackson, Chris Cormier, and Ronnie himself, all of whom were top 5 Mr. Olympia finishers. For many fans and experts, the 2002 Strength Show was the true night that Gunter finally surpassed the king of the sport, Ronnie Coleman. At the time, Gunter had yet to win any IFBB professional championships. However, weeks after achieving an impressive top 5 finish at the Olympia, he walked onto the stage of this new show with renewed confidence. And it was there, facing Coleman, that Gunter claimed his first professional victory. This triumph gave us one of the most memorable scenes in bodybuilding history. Gunter on his knees, thrilled, as the crowd erupted in joy at the result. The moment was iconic, with Gunter defeating the, until then, unbeatable Ronnie Coleman, something few thought was possible. Gunter's victory that day was not just a surprise, it cemented his position as an elite athlete, renowned for his dedication and perseverance. He had finally shown the world that he was at the top of bodybuilding, although many still argue that his career did not receive the recognition it deserved. There is no doubt that that night, Gunter showed the world that he could compete on equal terms with the greatest legends of the sport, etching his name in history, even in such a competitive era. It's really intriguing how just a few weeks earlier, Gunter hadn't even cracked the top 4 at the Mr. Olympia, but suddenly he was beating the absolute champion. By the time the 2003 Mr. Olympia rolled around, Gunter was already a crowd favorite. After all, having defeated giant Ronnie Coleman, his popularity and charisma skyrocketed. From the front, he was nearly flawless. His physique had size, definition, and a stage presence that few could match. Yet even as a standout athlete, Gunter still faced challenges in competitions. He frequently came close, finishing in the top 5, but failed to crack the top spots. His biggest obstacle? His back. That area was never as developed as the rest of his body, which ended up compromising his chances at major competitions. Still, at the 2003 Mr. Olympia, Gunter managed another 5th-place finish, this time ahead of former runner-up Kevin Levrone, in a historic edition marked by the legendary battle between Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler. And so the question arises, could the German, now that he had already made the podium, finally break into the Mr. Olympia top 3? At that point, things seemed to be turning in his favor, and he was already considered one of the favorites. So much so that, at the press conference before the 2004 Mr. Olympia, one of the most incredible additions in history, Gunter created one of the most memorable moments. He bravely challenged Ronnie Coleman, generating a tense and electrifying atmosphere between the competitors. It was one of the key moments of tension before the show, proving that bodybuilding has always had a special style, and Gunter knew how to spice things up with his charisma and confidence. We have reached a truly memorable point, the 2004 Mr. Olympia. This was one of the most remarkable competitions in the history of bodybuilding, a true spectacle that left many fans in awe. It was the year when Gunter, a crowd favorite, and Markus Rühl, another German giant, gave us one of the most emotional moments, watching these two titans face off on stage. Especially during the iconic back pose, it was surreal. They both had an intimidating presence. But that night, Marcus Rule emerged victorious, impressing the judges with his absurdly wide and detailed back. Although Rule won that head-to-head, the 2004 Mr. Olympia was also marked by other equally epic moments, reinforcing why this edition is considered one of the most shocking of all time. Gunter, for his part, fought hard and managed to secure a spot in the top 6, but sadly he couldn't climb any higher. He finished in 7th place, once again falling short of the coveted top 5 for many fans. This was a disappointment, as Gunter had been seen as a rising star in bodybuilding. The competition was fierce, and for all his charisma and dedication, the German couldn't break that barrier. What Gunter didn't know at the time, however, was that the following year, 2005, would bring him the best placing of his career. Although 2004 was a tough competition, he was about to enter a phase of personal triumph. The 2005 Mr. Olympia promised to be even more challenging, with names like Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler dominating the scene. But Gunter was determined not just to participate, but to finally stand out. In 2005, Gunter was at the peak of his physical condition and at the pinnacle of the bodybuilding world. Alongside legendary trainer Charles Glass, he was determined to challenge Ronnie Coleman, the reigning champion. The big question that year was, how would Gunter, with his incredibly defined physique, compete against the fierce competition? 2005 is remembered as one of the most exciting Mr. Olympias in history, marked by the intense rivalry between Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman. Behind this iconic showdown, however, Gunter made history by securing an impressive 4th-place finish, the high point of his Olympia career. In photos from the 2005 Mr. Olympia, Gunter still looked youthful at 36, an age considered promising, especially since Ronnie Coleman won his first title at 34. But few could have predicted that these would be the last images of Gunter on the big stage. At the 2006 Mr. Olympia, Gunter finished in 10th place, and it was then that he noticed a slight decline in the quality of his physique. It was at this point that the German made a bold decision. He chose to retire from bodybuilding for good. Now all we are left with is to admire the epic photos and videos of Gunter during the golden years of bodybuilding. He chose a healthier life, away from the spotlight. His decision to prioritize longevity was admirable, especially in such a demanding sport. This choice was reflected in his appearance as, within a few years, he lost much of his massive muscle mass, transforming his physique into something very different than what we saw on stage. Today, Gunter lives a completely different life, away from the pressure of maintaining a monstrous physique, focusing on his health and his family. Memories of those epic training sessions at Gold's Gym with Charles Glass are still fresh in fans' minds. But watching Gunter today, we see a man who has embraced his evolution over the years. Although he has partially stepped away from the world of weightlifting and competition, he is not afraid to show how his life has changed over time. At 54, Gunter decided to turn the page and live a new chapter, a more balanced and healthy one. In your opinion, should he have won the 2002 Mr. Olympia? And looking at his career in general, do you think he was an underrated athlete? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave your comment, and subscribe to Bodybuilding World for more content. See you in the next video.